Good evening, everybody. If you don't know, my name is Scott Muir. I'm the superintendent of schools here in Minnesota, and I wanted to thank you so much for being here tonight. Taking some time out of your busy evening, or maybe a relaxing evening, however that looks to you, and coming and listening to this opportunity. We want to pass to you that some information about how this bond looks and what we're doing and why we're doing it. And then feel free to ask questions as we move around and go through that. Raise your hand, and I'll be more than happy to answer your questions to the best of my ability. And we'll kind of go from there. If not, I've got a really smart lady over here that can help me with it. And that's Alexa. She hates it anywhere, so she's my business manager, so she keeps me online. So anyway, just a little bit of information for you before we get started on the slideshow, and I'll give you some information from that as well. But as many of you know, if you grew up here, our high school has been around since about 1960, right around that era, and so it's coming to a part where its life is shortening as we move along, and as we look at the things that the school offers. It's been a great school. It really has. I'm going to pick on my wife again tonight because she's here. She graduated back in the old days, and she's got some great memories of this school, as I'm sure many of you do that have attended it and graduated from here. I've always appreciated Soda Springs. I've had family that grew up in this area. My mom and dad grew up in Bancroft and Chesterfield, and I've always had an appreciation for Soda Springs. I really thought it was a great place to be. And when this job opened up, I asked my wife what she thought about applying, and she kind of said, "Yeah, go ahead." You typically have to interview several times before you get a job like this, and you probably won't get this one, but go ahead. I've got the microphone, so she's anyway. So I was pretty excited to be able to get the job here and come over here and be a part of Soda Springs in this community, because, like I said, I've got cousins that have grown up in this community, obviously in-laws that have taught here and been established here for a long time, and I just love the beauty and the wonderful things that Soda Springs has to offer. Anyway, so coming over here and being in education for about 30 years now, you look at things as a superintendent differently than you do a principal. You look at things, the different types of changes that are going on, whether it be educationally or facilities-wise, and you look at those things and see how you can better things for not only the community, but the students as well. And we think that something like this is, going to benefit our community and benefit our students also. And again, as I mentioned, we had an assessment done about 10 years ago. When I say we, the previous administration, and the assessment of the buildings in the community, specifically this one, was that this was about a 10, 15-year lifespan from that, back in 2014. I do have that data. If you want to come and look at it, it's in my office over at the district office, and I'd be more than happy to share that with you. Fortunately, and as you know, you passed a bond several years ago for Tiger Middle School, and that middle school is a great school. It's in great shape. And I look at Thurtle, and the same thing with Thurtle. It's been around just about as long as the high school, but it's in very, very good shape. But it misses one important thing, and that's a gymnasium for our kiddos. That when it comes to be wintertime, it gets a little bit cold to go outside, and we'd like to have a place that they can go in the middle of the winter and to have that opportunity to stay warm and still get some of that energy out that they've been building up in class. So we'll go through that process and kind of go from there a little bit and share some things with you about this. And again, please, any questions you have, just raise your hand. If you want to hang on to it and ask questions at the end of it, that'd be fine too. So we've created a website. Let me back up a little bit, because I want to dispel a couple of rumors that I've been hearing that I'd like to say yes, they're coming to fruition, but they're not. Number one is, I had quite a few questions about whether or not we're going to be consolidating with Grace and Bancroft. This is one of those steps forward. I would love to tell you that that's what this is about. Unfortunately, this particular time, neither Grace nor Bancroft are interested in that. I know that this has been a conversation long before I got here. In fact, Katie, my wife, mentioned that she thinks the conversations even being had back in the day when she was in high school, to see what that would be. I know my parents graduated from Northgate High School, and I loved that, doing many things in that high school, because my grandmother was the assistant principal / superintendent, so we had Thanksgiving dinner there every year in the kitchen. And I don't think that school's changed since I was there back in the high school student, and I know it hasn't changed since my parents were there either, so. We talked, I visited with both superintendents over there a year ago, and both of them seemed to be willing to visit with their, in fact, they did visit with their board members, and, said, let's do something that isn't overly official, but let's do it kind of unofficially and see where that interest might lay in line. As we talked about that, we're going to bring a couple of board members. As you know, if you have 3 board members at a meeting, you have to post that as a board hearing or a board meeting, excuse me. And so we're hoping that we can get 2 from each community, along with the superintendents, and just sit down and have a conversation. Quick conversation about what their thoughts were, what their community vibe was, and where they were going from there. And unfortunately, that conversation didn't happen. So at this point in time, one of the things that we feel like we need to do is move forward with the bond to be able to build this high school without Grace and Bancroft involved in it. Which brings me to another question that's been asked several times. What if we pass this bond and then Grace and Bancroft decide that they want to jump on board and consolidate schools? First of all, it's a process. And by that I mean it takes a lot. We have to have approval through the Iowa School Boards Association. We have to have approval and redraw boundaries through the Iowa School Boards Association for board members. There's conversations like that go down the road, and we have to talk about how is that representation going to look between the 3 communities as far as the board's concerned. Would there be, and these are just examples, would there be 2 from Soda, and maybe Grace and Bancroft would get 1 and then split 1? A lot of different conversations that way that things would have to go. And so that leads me to the bonding. What would that look like if we did consolidate down the road? Would that lift the burden? And of course it would. It would spread that tax out a little bit more amongst the whole county, so including Grace and Bancroft. And that would alleviate some of that that tax for us. Not alleviate it, but it would spread it out a little bit more, if you will. And so if that makes sense, and helps you through that process to think about that. So the conversations have been had, and we want to continue to have those conversations. Me not being from either of the 3 communities, but still believing in them, I can see the need for a consolidation, especially when you go to Bancroft and you see Northgate High School. It's a great high school. It's been a great high school for a long time, and for a lot of people as well. It's put a lot of people through it. But at the end of the day, there's some need there for sure as well, and they just can't obviously seem to pass a bond either. And then of course Grace, they just finished that elementary school a couple of years ago. And so again, that bond that they're still in would also come over, and we would help pay for some of that as well. So all those finances would combine and bring everything together, and then the county in and of itself would make those payments. And I don't know how exactly that works monetarily, but it would come together and everybody would be responsible for that within the county. So it would just be Soda Springs built the high school, and they're the only ones that have to pay for it if Grace and Bancroft decide to consolidate with us. So I hope that answers some of that question. Alexa, there was another one that we had, and I can't remember off the top of my head. There were 3 questions that we were going to address tonight. You remember the other one? Maybe it'll come to me, and maybe it'll come to you. I had it on that piece of paper, remember, and I didn't bring it with me. And maybe I already addressed it, but if it comes to me, I'll come back to you and talk about it. So, back to the website. This is a website that we created. It's under sodaschoolsbond.org. And this is where my presentation is going to come from tonight. We want to make sure that we walk you through it and give you the opportunity to see the things and the information that is on here, and then you can go back and look at and ask questions and answer questions, or ask questions and we can answer those questions. There'll be a place where if you want to email, the email will come to us, and we'll be able to respond to. We've had a couple of those already. One of them was, and this is not necessarily what we're going to talk about, but this is another question. One of the questions that came through in the last couple of weeks since we had our first meeting was, could we split the bond between the two schools? In other words, where we're adding on the Thurgood and adding a gym, could we bond separately for that and bond separately for the high school? And the answer is yes, we could do that. The challenge with that is we look at that, and as we've learned, and we look at history, past history, prices continue to go up, right, for materials, building materials, and those types of things. And so for us to be able to do that, it would probably be wise if we build the high school, we pass the bond, we build the high school, then we'd probably want to wait that 20 years, or piggyback off that bond that already exists. That's what you'd have to do, and then add on to Thurgood or vice versa. Either way, what you'd find out is that you're still going to, at some point, probably pay similar amounts. And again, with that idea of cost going up for building materials, it may end up being even more in the long run. So anyway, just kind of that information. I thought that was a great question. And I'll just throw the other one out too, because I thought it was a great question as well. I don't know if many of you know, but the trees out here have memorials underneath them. And I don't know everybody on them, but somebody had emailed and asked, well, so what would we do with those memorials and those trees? And one of the things we talked about, and this isn't the decision, we're not the decision makers, we'd like to hear from all of you if you've got another idea, but we talked about in some of our meetings that we had, that is we have to remove these pine trees that are out here on the front end of the building. We can take those memorials, and with those trees, we can maybe build some benches, have our woods classes that we're putting together through our CTE program, we can build some benches and put some plaques on those benches, put those plaques on those benches, or similar plaques to that, and as a memorial for those folks that are being honored underneath those trees. And so that's an idea. I'd love to hear more if you've got other ideas as to what we can do with that and continue that memorialization of those folks. So let's just kind of go through this again. What we have is educating today's students for tomorrow's opportunities. If you go down, you can see on the right-hand side more information. It's also the same on the ribbon above. So you got home, bond information, news, events, and videos, and then more. And then again on the bottom, or on the right-hand side of the website, is the very same information with each tile that you can click on. Just give you a heads up and talk a little bit about some of the information we have on there. So number one, we'll start here on the top left. The new Soda Springs High School. I think it started in 1959 and finished around 1961, the building of it. So that, again, that'll tell you that it's about 60 plus years old. As I mentioned, it's reaching the end of its projected lifespan. Is that clear? Is it a little blurry for anybody? Can you see it okay? Okay. Maybe it's just me. Maybe I should put my glasses on. My wife brought for me. And again, that was for the engineers facilities condition evaluation that we had done 10 years ago. The bond election is on November 5th, just like all the other elections that we're going to be voting on for November 5th. And so we want to just kind of remind you about that. In-person absentee voting now until November 1st at the Caribou County Courthouse, and then mail-in absentee voting now until October 22nd. And you can request a ballot at Caribou County Courthouse or visit voteidaho.gov. And then there's more information, again, as I mentioned, on sodaschoolsbond.org and voter information, and that's one of the tiles you can see on the right. Again, the goal is to add on to Thurgood Elementary School, 6 classrooms. One of the reasons that we are doing that, since I've been here and having been a middle school principal for 20 plus years, of a 6th through 8th middle school, I often thought and questioned even if 6th graders should be in a middle school. But they seem to fit pretty well there. That's when they're maturing a little bit, right? I wish I had this photo. I had one of my sons was a 6th grader and was about this tall. and about this round. And he stood next to a girl that was in 6th grade, and she was very skinny and stood probably 6 or 8 inches taller than him as a 6th grader. It was just a perfect 6th grade look when I was there. I never took a picture of it, and I wish I would have, but it's ingrained here. So one of the things that I've heard time and time again is that people with students in school would like to see the 5th grade back in the elementary school. And so that's one of the reasons why we're looking at adding 6 classrooms to Thurgood, because I really feel like they belong in an elementary school, less in a middle school. So one of the things that we're going to do is move those 5th graders back to the elementary school. That'll give us 3 classrooms. And then we can still have 3 classrooms there available for some special ed rooms and other things that we'll need to have. It means we get rid of the modular not only here, but the 2 modulars outside of the high school as well, to create more classrooms in here and keep students more secure and safe within the buildings. The new gymnasium, as I mentioned earlier, at the high school that we want to build would give those kids an opportunity to have PE throughout the day, instead of trying to hustle up, get the cafeteria cleaned real quick, and then have students utilize the cafeteria for their PE room, and we could spread that out maybe throughout the day as well. So those are the reasons for the elementary school and what we're looking at that. I've got a couple of renditions we'll show you here in a little bit. The high school, what we're looking at doing is building a new high school, and that transition will happen. Students will still be able to attend here at the high school, and the new one will be built right out front here. And again, I'll show you some drawings in a few minutes to kind of give you a better idea of what that's going to look like. It too will be 2-story. We'll build a new auditorium on the end, and then we'll build an auxiliary gym between the old gym, and we're going to keep the old gym. And I'll just use a story that was used with me last night. We had some friends that were over watching the volleyball game from Declo, and he said to me, "Scott, how long has this gym been here?" And I don't remember. I thought it was built back in the mid-'80s, but that's not true. Katie mentioned it was here when she was here, so that makes it, what, 72, 69 when you were graduate? It was built with the high school. Okay. So that gym was built when the high school was built. Okay, so they added on in the 80s. Gotcha. So it's been here a while, but it's been well taken care of. And we want to keep that because in my mind, it's one of the things that makes Soda Springs, Soda Springs. This gentleman that I was talking with last night from Declo, he says, "I remember playing in this gym. I've got some good memories about this gym." This is a gentleman who lived in Declo all of his life and came over and played. I've had a few comments that way. I remember coming over here for a wrestling tournament in high school and wrestling Soda Springs, and I know I wrestled in that gym now because I thought it was maybe after I was here, but if it was there, that's where we wrestled. And so it's a good solid, it's been well taken care of. One of the things that I want to share with you is that's what 90% of our community sees, right? When they come into the gym, they're like, "Why are we building a new high school? This gym is awesome." But we've got things that are antiquated enough in the building that again, with it being at the end of its life and what we're doing, we feel like we need to do. This building wasn't built for the technology that we have today. And so as you walk the halls, you'll see all of our networking wires running across the ceiling, along the wall, where we can put those in. And you want to be careful with how you're doing that too, right? If I was in high school, that would be something I would be trying to jump up and grab a hold of. That's just the way I work. But anyway, we got good kids, they don't do that. But so those are some of the things that we're looking at. So something that's important and that you need to know, most things that school districts are able to go out for, specifically levies, we go out for supplemental levies and we go out for facilities levies. Right now, we're in the middle of a 10-year facilities levy, and we pass, thank you to the community, we've been able to pass supplemental levies for the last 25 plus years. And what those levies do is obviously the facilities levies help us with the maintenance of our school buildings, our parking lots, etc. The supplemental levies really go to personnel. And so there's a formula that the state does, and you may or may not know about this, but when we went through COVID, they changed that formula to what was known as enrollment. And they knew that the state, when I say that, the state knew that when we were going through COVID, we'd have kids here and we wouldn't have kids here, right? I mean, that was part of what the issue was. Soda Springs, I remember, was one of the districts that decided to keep kids in school for the most part back then. And they got a little heat from it, but I'll tell you, across the state, we were cheering for them because the rest of us didn't want to do that. We were careful with that. But that being said, we had kids online and offline. And so the state moved to change that statute for a short period of time and pay us on enrollment. So that means every student that was enrolled in Soda Springs School District, we received money for. Now, a year ago, the state went back to the original statute, which you could only have the enrollment statute for so many years. They went back to the original statute of what they call average daily attendance. And that's how we get paid, and that's how we continue to get paid unless the state goes in and changes that statute, which they are working on for sure right now. Average daily attendance means they have several weeks throughout the year that they look at the student attendance rate, and they try to take that population, and then that's how they look at it, and that's how they fund schools. And so we try to make sure that kids are in school all the time for that very reason, because if we don't, and kids aren't there and our population's down because of absenteeism, obviously we don't get as much money. And so that's part of what that's looking for and what we're doing. So again, back to this, I digress and I apologize, but I wanted to kind of explain that to you. So when we vote for a school bond, the statute states that we have to have 66.67% of the constituents to vote yes in order to pass that. So it's not a 50 plus 1 like a levy is, it's a 66.67% voter yes in order to pass. And so obviously if you get 66%, that bond doesn't pass. 50 plus 1, it doesn't pass. And so again, just to reiterate to you, we are required by statute to have that approval rate of 66.67% to pass the bond. 55.1 million for the buildings, and I know that's sticker shock for a lot of people, and we recognize that. But again, if you go back and look through the past years at materials and building costs, et cetera, it's been on a steady rise. And there hasn't been anything that's really said, well, all these materials and building opportunities are going to go down. And so this is another thing that contributes to the timing of why we're looking at this, is that we want to kind of lock something in, so to speak, if we can, so that we don't come back in a year or two and that's increased to maybe 60 million or maybe more, depending on what that looks like and how that's going to go. 44.8 million will be the amount for the new replacement high school, and then about 10.3 million for the classroom and gym additions to Thurgood Elementary School. And then the tax cost, we got this, so Zions is the bank we worked through with for our bonding, and they had looked at Zillow, and they took the cost as tax cost was approximately $300.94 per 100,000. Our county assessor actually came back and said it's really $267 per 100,000. And so there's a little discrepancy there, and I'm just going to tell you it's going to end up somewhere between those two for that tax per 100,000. Okay? And I'll show you a calculator here in just a minute where you can go in and work on that and see what your assessment will be and what your assessment is, and you can add that to the calculator and get an idea of where your taxes will increase. So let's see. Let's go to bond facts. If you click there, take you to this page. You can scroll down on this page. As I mentioned, there's a tax impact calculator. And you can click there, or there's another tab over here on the other side on the home page where you can click and go to the calculator as well. And so you can click that in, and you can put your assessment in there. I'll show you that again in just a minute, and that'll give you an idea of what the approximate cost will be per year as well as per month for a household or property owner. On the right, it says you have a question, and in here you can put your name in, your email address, and then if you'll hit that question and write it in there and submit it, we'll receive a copy of that, and we'll get back to you within a couple of days to answer your question. And so if you want to do that, that's available to you as well. I've kind of described a little bit why the school district is going out to bond. I'm not going to go read all of these. I'll give you that opportunity to kind of look through it on your own as you go through it. But again, as we continually monitor the functional condition and projected lifespan of our facilities, as well as the capacity and anticipated growth of each school. The district has determined that the appropriate time to seek a bond has come. So, and then within this website, there's more details. What was the bond? What was the last bond and was it successful? We talked about that in 2017. It was the addition of the few classrooms and the gymnasium over at the middle school. And thank you again to the community for coming out and voting for that and giving us that opportunity. So that brings me to the next question, because maybe you're thinking about it. What happens to that bond compared to this bond? So there will be some overlap on the two bonds. That will be paying off the old one and starting the new one. So there'll be a little bit of that overlap that goes on, but that sunsets in September of 2027. And so once that bond for Tiger goes away, that tax will go away, and then you'll see that tax decrease a little bit. And so that'll, like I said, there'll be a little bit of overlap on that over the next couple of years, and then it'll go away. Again, what are the problems being assessed? Funding for replacement of high school and elementary school. It just kind of summarizes the same things that I've told you already. And then the project for the high school, the expansion project that goes off on that. It is a 20-year payoff, which gives us a little less interest rate. Obviously a little higher payment, but we can pay that off a little bit quicker than if we went for a longer term, 25 or 30 years. So, if and when the bond passes, the goal is to move as quickly as we can to start the building process. And that's going to be as soon as we can this next spring in 2025. We anticipate, again, that it'll be finished right around 2027. It'll take a couple of years to build. Again, we'll keep this one open and continue to use it until we can build the facility out front. And once we get the building out front built, then we'll move students into that building, and then we'll start the demolition of this building. And they'll be able to utilize that new building. Probably the gym and the auditorium will be being worked on, but it may be the last couple of things to finish out, just because we want to make sure we get our kids in the building, and that'll be the first focus that we want to continue to move with. Good question here. Have the projects been designed? And then that reminds me of the other one we wanted to talk about. Have the projects been designed? We're in the works. We've got an idea. Like I said, I'll show you a few renditions, but there's nothing necessarily set in stone yet, because we don't know what that's going to look like, and we may have to do some cutbacks. We may have to do some different things based on material costs and different things like that. But we have a couple of renditions that we want to show you tonight. There was a comment that came across one of the Facebook pages, and it essentially said that the school district did not go out to bid for their contractor as well as their architect. Idaho state statute essentially says that school districts don't go out to bid, and you can understand why possibly with the fact that we could go out to bid today, ask for the bond, and 6 months from now when we start building, those prices have increased immensely, and then we have to do that. Now, you can say the same thing with what we're doing with here, but at least that gives us a number that we can stay underneath, and we can do what we need to do to adjust if we need to. And so, understanding that, we do what's called an RFQ, which is a request for qualifications. And we put this out to the communities around in the newspapers, on our website. Companies reached out to us. We had a few companies that turned in their RFQ requests for qualifications, and there's criteria that we have to look at and judge them on, and put in why we think that construction company or that architect may score higher than everybody else. And so we ended up with an architect, Design West, and we ended up with a general contractor. What do you call it, really, Hiram? I know Headwaters, but I mean, it's not CMGC. Thank you, a CMGC, and it is Headwaters. And Hiram tonight is here representing them. So it's an RFQ process that we have to go through. It's not a bidding process. And then what Headwaters does after we've brought them on is they'll go out and they'll get those bids, and it'll be transparent between us, right? We'll have those communications. We'll talk about those subcontractors that can come in and work with Headwaters, and we'll have those communications to be able to discuss the needs, where we're at, and really go from there. So the bids process comes underneath Headwaters in communication with us as well. And I hope that clears some things up that was out there. Did I do it justice? Okay. I know we talked about that a lot, and I know, and unfortunately, there's a lot of stuff and information out there, and that's why we're doing these meetings, is so that we can help people understand what really we are bound by as a school district in order to be able to go through this process. And again, there's the question, is there any way to separate the two bonds? And I kind of described that as well. All right, let's go back up. Let's just go real quick, we'll look at the high school. Kind of what we're talking about. This gives you the information that I've kind of already described to you. Here's our good building. Per professional engineer report, the building has reached the end of its projected life cycle. Excessive structural deficiencies, including cracked foundations, and again, this is all in the report. If you're interested, give me a holler, and I'd be more than happy to show that to you in any way we can. The HVAC system does not meet our current building code for air circulation. Oh, I'm the fat guy in the middle, is that what you're saying? Are still okay? Okay. Parking lot circulation, again, we'll show you that here in just a minute. Safety issues. I came last night for a volleyball game. We had those school football games going on, and there was just no place to park. And rightly so. I mean, it's a concern coming in and out of the parking lot for sure. As you know, we were fortunate enough to be able to put a little money in through some facilities money we had to patch some of those big canyons in the parking lots here and at the middle school, and we were able to do that. So part of that will be parking lot changes as well. Commons area, a lack of area where students can come together and visit. I think Katie even said that I don't think you stuck around for the cafeteria back in your day, right? And part of that is the open campus we have, but we'd like to really be able to have a place where students can come and just kind of hang out and have the cafeteria here as well, and make it large enough where it's accommodating for what they're looking for. And then of course ADA compliance, that's one of the challenges we face. We do have an elevator, it's been around a long time. It doesn't fully function all the time, and we want to make sure we become ADA compliant, not just there, but for everything else as well. This is that report that we've talked about. I'm not going to go through it for you, but we'll come down and the proposals are there too. So this kind of gives you an idea of what we're looking for. Just a rendition. I wish I had a pointer. I think. Not a good touch this, I'll probably shut things off. Anyway, the one on the left is an aerial view. As you can see, if I can get there, right here, this is the west side of the building right now, where the two modulars are. We're looking at making that some student parking. This right here would be the two-story building with the classrooms in it. This right here would be the new auditorium, and this would be the new auxiliary gym. Some athletic rooms here and here. And this would be the commons area right here. You can see that we'll keep some of the parking lot here. This would probably be for faculty and staff, or parent parking as they come in and need to come into the building and visit with administration or teachers. And then all of this area over here would be parking again for staff, and then obviously for games and different things. That road that goes out and comes back to the west is part of our property as well, and we do own that, and we're talking about putting that as a bus lane going out from the building to kind of free up some of that traffic flow as well. And so they'll come out onto the highway there and look at that. We're going to keep all the ball fields the way they are. We're not adding anything to those places at all. As you know, those costs can get pretty expensive as well, and so that would up that cost more if we needed to. And so this is kind of what we're looking at on the right side home here, kind of a look of the building, and kind of match that to our area. And again, this is all subject to change, but this is kind of a rendition that we're looking at. I'll just scroll down a little bit more and give you an aerial view, a little different look. So again, on the left is what I showed you up top with that exit going off to the northwest. You can see the streets in front, those exits and entrances will still be there, and we'll have those parking areas as well. Just a real quick bit of information for you if you've wondered or if you don't know, up here, right here is our new VOAC building that Mr. McMurray wrote a grant for, and we received almost $400,000 for that new building. We're working on creating a new CTE building that's going to have automotive shop. And so this bond doesn't pay for any of that. That's something that we received through a grant that we felt like would be a great addition to our high school and giving our high school students an opportunity to do some things. We've got a couple of teachers that have come on board. We're teaching diesel mechanics as well as we're working in construction classes, so that's been a positive for us as well. And then over here on the right again, you can see this would be the gymnasium, the old gymnasium. Am I looking at that right? Over here. Yeah, okay, I'm backwards. Yeah, sorry. So the gray on the left is the gymnasium, the orange in the middle is the auxiliary gym, and then the auditorium is kind of that purple green, and then the classrooms on the front side. Thank you. Kind of give you an idea what that's going to look like. And then one more little visual. Classrooms, media center. Media center will be on the second floor. Stairs on either side, and then I think the elevator will be somewhere in the middle. All right, let's go to the third one, give you an idea what that's going to look like. Again, information that I've already discussed and explained to you. Moving fifth graders back, growing some classroom space for everything. And so and this is one of the hardest things for me, is I hate to see grass go away, right? But really, to make this fluid, we're talking about taking that front lawn away, leveling it to the best of our ability, making that a pull in, pull out for parent drop off, as well as parking. I joke all the time that long walk from the parking lot to the principal's office is a great time for parents who are angry. They get to walk off some steam before they get into the office, right? And get frustrated. But at the end of the day, we want to bring that closer and easier access for parents also. So the red over here on the right, this will be the 6 classrooms area, and then the gym right here. I'm going to bring a pointer. And then we're going to build out the offices a little bit more, bring them closer to that parking lot. The parking lot on the east will continue to remain there, although we're taking some of it out. That'll be again for staff parking, and we'll keep the bus drop-off area in the same place on the west side of the building, as you can see. So kind of diverting that traffic away from everything, where parents can still go out the east side and then take a right or left to where they need to go after dropping off or picking up their students. So again, kind of an idea of what that building's going to look like when it's finished. On the left, you'll see the gymnasium. There'll be an outside entrance where we can close off the building for the weekend when we have city and community things going on, and maintain that. And then there'll be an entrance, obviously, from that back side for the students to be able to go into the gymnasium from that way. And again, that office build out a little bit so that you can see where we're going to put the 6 classrooms on the left and the gymnasium facing towards the main building that are coming out. And again, just another look, kind of get a feel for what that's going to be like that way. Okay. Let's jump into the big question. So if you look at this graph, this pie chart, and I want to share with you that I have met and communicated with some of our industry folks, specifically Simplot, IFOS, and AIR, and I've gone through this presentation with them as well. What's important to note is that as a resident of this bond amount, you're going to be paying right around 26% of that tax. Okay? Industry, Bear, the big mines, those folks are going to be picking up 62%. So this has changed a little bit because when we talked to our county assessor, he mentioned that the amount of money that industry is paying is a little bit higher than what local businesses are paying. Okay, does that make sense? And so your local businesses are picking up about 7% of that. Am I saying this right, Alexa? Yeah, they were combined to make 69% at one time. But it's a 7% for commercial, industry is the 62%, residential is 26%, and those that own agricultural properties, it's 5%. And so, great meeting with our community industry folks. I have not met with our small businesses, and maybe that's something I need to look at doing, and maybe meeting with them and answer some of their questions. But I just kind of wanted to give you an idea of what that's going to look like as well. Okay. Real quick, this page just kind of gives news, updates, videos, reminds you of the bond election, the two articles that we put into the newspaper, A in the Idaho State Journal and Caribou County News. You can go on those websites and find the actual verbiage for what we're asking you to vote for. You can read that and look at it. And then I'll jump right here to the tax calculator. So each one of you receive every year an assessed value of your property. And we want you to make sure that you see this part in yellow. So the amount that you will pay extra in taxes for this bond comes underneath your net taxable property value. And for this particular sample, we put in $387,935. And so you can take that number that's on your assessment, $387,935. Let's see, it's down below, is it? Is it up top? 387. Where is it, Alexa? I thought it was on that page too. Put it this way. What?
It was right above that.
Did I miss it?
The box is gone.
Right here. It's like you made a hot button. That's no window. Put it in the middle, there we go, we're there. We'll do it over again. The brain doesn't work that long. 387,935. So you'll come into this box and type 387,935. Good. So at 387,935 net taxable property value, you would see an annual increase from the bond at approximately $1,167.45 a year, or $97.29 a month. So you see an increase at approximately that much. Again, obviously that'll go up or down depending on your assessed value. So I'll leave that up for a minute. Chew on that. That's really all I have is a presentation tonight. Am I missing anything? So I would love to answer questions, if you've got any, and kind of have some open conversation if you've got some thoughts or questions about it.
Are there any bonds that they're looking, or help
Grants?
that they're looking at, help with this?
No, we haven't looked into any grants. I mean, that's always an option. I know somebody had asked, would big industry be willing to make some donations or grants? No, we haven't. It's an option. We can certainly try and look into those things for sure. But typically, I don't know that there's any grants out there that would pay for a project obviously this big, but you might find grants for maybe classroom materials, classroom desks, different things like that. So, I mean, that's always an option for sure. Good question. Yeah.
So with the elementary school, you say that it's very
Yeah, and I don't remember it, but there hasn't been any foundational cracks in that. Have you got it on your phone? You can try to look. I know that it's a lot longer than what the high school is, just based on the foundation is in good shape, the roof is in good shape. Quite honestly, we've got quite a few leaks that happen on a regular basis here at the high school, and so we're fixing those. Like I mentioned, the boiler, different things like that. But thermal is in very good shape, and whether that's, just, I don't know how to tell you why that is, other than maybe it was taken care of. I believe this was taken care of as well. But it's I couldn't tell you the answer to that, other than the fact that no, it's got a longer lifespan yet. Yeah, and so that's one of the things that it says in that report, is that if there was a major earthquake that this community could have, it would not be able to withstand that. Of course, we haven't had that, right? And so with the foundational challenges that we're looking at, and some of those things, cracks in the walls and different things like that, they were concerned that a major earthquake wouldn't last. Good questions. Thanks. So over the years, the supplemental levy has been anywhere between approximately 700,000 and $1 million. And again, that goes back to us, like I was talking about earlier, and I probably trailed off on that. The state reimburses us or gives us money based on average daily attendance. And right, so that helps, that gives us salaries for teachers, not just teachers, but also paraprofessionals, classified staff, superintendent, principals. So it covers most of that. The supplemental levy, that's why we go out for it, because we're typically a little bit lower in paying those out than what we normally have. And so it becomes important for us to try and pass those so we can maintain the staffing and the things that we have. Yeah. Two separate things. The supplemental is more personnel, and the bond is facilities. Now, maybe for the facilities levy that we're out there with, if the bond passes, obviously we're gonna have a brand new school, right? And we're gonna be able to work with that, but we want maybe that facilities levy could come down a little bit. It's something we haven't talked about by the board. And so we would look at that for sure as we come back around, as that bond's built, or as the bond passes. And we come in and we build a new high school, we add on to the knowing what's there. But again, there's always that maintenance opportunity that we have to continue to upkeep those things and do those things. But for a few years, that's something we could look at. That facilities levy is 10 years. Typically, what you try and pass it for, so you have that money, those monies to be able to continue to help maintain your buildings. Good question. So we talked about that. We talked about that a little bit, and maybe you came in a little bit later. That is one of the things that I've been in communication with them about a year ago, and right now there's no interest. I know it's been talked about for years, upon years here in this community. And who knows, would that be something that we could draw kids from, and maybe that's something that they look at and go, wow, maybe that's something we would be interested in, I don't know. But if that happens, then we mentioned earlier that the bond money will separate now through all 3 school districts, right? And everybody would contribute to that, not just Silver Springs.
One thing you gotta look at with consolidation, every person I've talked to from Grace wants to build it down to line. Well, you gotta put in a track, a football field, baseball, softball diamonds, a school, you have to do a sewer security, the sewer. Huh? And I mean, my problem with that is the safety of the kids, because that is a major highway with the trucks. But everyone that has talked to me from Grace, that's where they want to know.
So, great questions, and conversations that we've definitely had, and I had a year ago with the other 2 superintendents, and it came out, we thought we were gonna be able to come to the table and have that conversation with some of our board members and the supers, and then the next thing I know, that we're not interested, so. I think we continue to try and have those conversations, and if you know people in both those communities that are for that, encourage them to visit with their board members and their superintendents and get those voices out. I got one here, we'll come back to you.
Just a comment,
Can everybody hear you?
having been here forever, first time I heard about consolidation back in 1966, when I was in junior high.
Yeah, junior high, so 1966, Gavin said was the first time he remembers hearing about consolidation between the 3 districts.
And it was pretty serious then.
Yeah.
Why?
Yeah.
Good thing is, seems like I heard when this school was built, it had a projected 40-year life.
Mhm.
The new school would be built as a 60-year life, is that correct?
Yeah, what,
I mean, it hasn't been designed fully, right, so say that for certain. But yeah, typically with the typical construction type of the day for schools that we're doing, yeah, 60, 70, 80.
Yeah.
And I've had a lot of districts talk about 100-year lifespan right now. That's a long time, but yeah, definitely 60.
and just a little bit of information for Headwaters, they built quite a few schools in southeastern Idaho. They involved quite a few buildings that way, Teton, Thunder Ridge, Madison. So, they've got some pretty good experience that way as well. Come back to you with the question you had.
So, does the
No.
and I don't know about
No, it's a great question, because you know what? She asked if the state of Idaho helps with any of the money for building of schools, and they do not. They give us money for maintenance, right, and operations of those buildings, and so that's really what you're looking at. My wife and I lived in Arizona back in 2000 through 2008. Arizona did build schools for school districts. There was a state tax that was put around and put aside, and when you came and were in the need for a new building, and they had a committee, a state committee that would come up and they would assess your buildings, and they would look at the population of students and what that looked like, the antiquation of that school, is antiquation, it is now, isn't it? The antiquity of that school, and then they would build you a school. Now, if you needed ball stadiums, football fields, baseball fields, softball fields, track, anything like that, that's what you would bond from your communities. But in 2008, after the economy crashed, that went away in Arizona, and they no longer do that. So it's a great idea if the state would do it. We don't. It's a good question. Yes?
Does the school district
I'm
own,
gonna come closer because I'm hard of hearing.
does the school district own the old Whitman School and
Good question. We still do.
property?
Yeah.
Is that a possibility to be sold as a supplement?
Yeah, let me just tell you what we've done the last couple of years. Great question. So his question was, does the school district still own Hooper Elementary School? And yes, we do. And his question further is, could that be sold to offset some of this? And absolutely it can. So in the state of Idaho, when you sell a property like Cooper, the school district owns, you have to have it assessed. And we did that my first year here, the spring of 2022. We had it assessed, and it assessed at 1.1 million for the 6.2 acres in the building that stands on it. At that point, once you assess it, then you go out to bid, and there's a couple ways you can do it, open bid or sealed bid. We did a sealed bid, and you open that sealed bid for X amount of time, and anybody that's interested in spending that, buying that building can come in and do that. But the clause is, they have to offer the 1.1 million or more. Obviously, we didn't get anything, right? And so after that time period is over, we open that ballot, or those mail-in bids, if there were any, and we didn't accept those, then the school district can open that up to anybody that's interested. And so we did that for, the remaining year that it was available to us, and we didn't have anybody come looking at it. So a year later, we did the same thing. We went and had it assessed again, because we were looking pretty hard at what that needed to be. And it came out at $950,000. And again, we had that period of time where we didn't receive any bids for it. I had gotten a few phone calls from some people that were interested, and they wanted to know what the board was looking for. And at the time, we didn't have a number. I just kind of said, come and let us know what you think you want to pay for it. We'll have that conversation with the board and see if that's something we can do. And nobody came through and did that. So we're kind of in that process with it, and in order to be able to sell it, I'd have to go back out again and have it reassessed, get that value again, go through that process again, and then we can open it up again as well. I've got some pipe dream ideas for it, but that's what they are, pipe dreams right now. So, again, it is something we would like to do something with, obviously. It's an expense in and of itself. We're trying to keep those costs as low as we can without doing much to it, because it's an antiquated building and it's not up to code at all to put students in there. We talked about that as well, what that cost would look like. And I think we figured it'd be around 2 or 3 years ago, about 4.5 million to bring it up to code, which obviously has grown since then. And then you gotta look at personnel for the building, and heating it and doing all those other things. And we just really felt like adding the 6 classrooms at third floor, we already have the personnel and the things that are going on, that would be an easier fit for us. Thanks for that question, it's a great one. Yeah?
So I know Noel was up in elementary a couple of years ago. I thought we needed 4 classrooms right now, just for the elementary government with it. Bring over.
No, and so, to be honest with you, we're down a little bit in population, and that just depends, it comes up and down. Not much, but looking at bringing, so in each of the elementary grade levels, we have 3 classrooms per grade level, and we can fit up to 30 students per class. So that'd give us 90 students. We've only had a couple of classes come through that large. Our population in each grade level ranges anywhere from maybe 70 to 90 throughout K-12. And so we looked at that pretty seriously and felt like the 6 classrooms would be enough at this time. Bringing the 5th grader back, giving those 3 classrooms. We've got 3 classrooms for every other grade level at this point, and we'd have 3 classrooms for possible special ed rooms, because we're going to lose and get rid of the modular, and then we've got special ed students in those classrooms. That gives us 3 classrooms to really kind of look at where we can open up. If we've got a class of 90, we can move say a second grade class of 90 kids, we can move another class into that one of those classrooms and utilize it that way. Good question, Jacob, thank you. 20 years. 20 years. We mentioned that it's a little bit higher interest rate, but it gets paid off in 20 years as opposed to a longer payment for 25 or 30 years. Question back here.
A couple questions for you. The first one, you said you met with, industry, right? They're picking up a big chunk of the thing, so what's their opinion on that?
They're in support of it. Yeah, they're
And then
in
the second question is, why not make the school one level so you don't have to worry about ADA down the road? We have problems here now because of the elevator, right?
Right.
So,
Yeah.
I think you're just opening yourself up for problems.
Absolutely. No, it's a great question. And part of that is space. It'd be tough, I think, to build a one-level building with the space that we have. And so looking at going that 2-story, that created a more comfortable space for us and to be able to continue to attend school here. So, I mean, that's really what it came down to. What was the first question? Industry. So they were in support. We had one gentleman from one of the companies, one of them asked, how can we as a company pay more so that it takes a burden off the community more? And obviously you can't, but I thought, wow, that's a pretty positive statement for somebody to make in one of our minds that is concerned. But honestly, we haven't received anything but support from them. And I shared this story in the last meeting. I'll share it with you again. A couple of years ago, there was a piece of legislation that came through, and it was my first year. I didn't hear about it. I didn't know anything about it. And Aaron Cook from the assessor's office called me and said, "Have you heard anything about this piece of legislation?" Essentially, what it was, over in Boise, there was a company that was trying to pass legislation to take away the tax of their movable equipment. Does that make sense? They're taxed on that stuff right now. And so that legislation was going through one of the senators over in Boise, and this is what amazed me because we got quite a few industries like this, whether it be up north logging companies or even over in American Falls, they've got some of that. The only community this piece of legislation is going to affect was Soda Springs. And I had no idea. So we gathered, Aaron, myself, Senator Harris, and fortunately Bear sent two representatives over to that same meeting. They had gotten wind of it and went over and they talked on our behalf and they said, look, we don't want this legislation to pass. We don't want to put that burden on our communities. It's not fair, it's not right. And so that legislation was rewritten so that Soda Springs would be the one that was affected by it, the only one that was affected by it. I think it did pass, but again, we didn't see the brunt of that. And that's the kind of support I feel like we're getting from our industry, truly, and communicating with them. They were very positive about it and going down that road. So, Aaron.
First question I had was, 5 years ago we built our house. Cost it doubled since then. With inflation and the situation going on right now, building materials and stuff, I'm sure that's kind of an all-time high right now.
Yeah.
Is there any, and maybe you can kind of speak to that, is there any assurances about as costs, if they were to come down, if we had maybe less inflation, somebody else running things in the White House or whatever, if that changed, does that factor into things as prices change, up or down? How would that work?
Sure. So just a couple things. We've done a lot about this, and so a few things. Number one is we've been building schools now we've been building at least a school, if not multiple schools, since 2016. And we built some before that, but steadily since then. And year upon year, we've never seen costs go down, that they're always constantly rising. And that's kind of intuitive, but at the same time, it's just good to maybe hear. We obviously know that with COVID and everything else, those costs crept a lot quickly. We've seen some like leveling out on certain things, you know, certain materials, but, labor costs haven't come backwards. So, I wouldn't anticipate there being there might be, but I wouldn't anticipate that. The nice thing about the way that the project is procured with the contractor is it essentially becomes a guaranteed maximum price. And what's nice about that is, you know, it won't exceed that number, but we're constantly looking to look for savings along the way. And I would say for a lot of projects that we've done, we've been able to get to the end, and it's not that we give money back, we just never bill for it. And so, if we find savings, maybe the cost of a certain material goes down, and when we bid that out, it comes in less than our budget, that's the number, and we bill for what we have, and if there's kind of a delta, then the district can decide to enhance programs, enhance scope, or simply just not bill for it. You know, so it's nice. If this was a hard bid method, you know, we would give a bid, and that's the bid, and if we found savings along the way as the contractor, we keep that. That's just how it works. But in this method, we're giving that back, but we set a guaranteed maximum price up front, which will not be exceeded. So it's a good kind of solution for that. And like I said, I don't anticipate costs going down. The nice thing too is the method, the CMGC method, we open up all the subcontractor bids with the district present. That's part of the law. So they get to see every single subcontractor bid that comes through the door, which gives a level of transparency that, again, a project under like a hard bid scenario, they don't get that level of transparency. And so if we together, we get those bids in, they see them, and if there's some savings, like I said, great, that just goes back to the district, or we just never bill for it.
Scott?
Yeah, so I'm trying to think of,
The question was, are there any schools that come underneath that while it bid?
so we built Black Canyon Middle School up in Idaho Falls, and as we, we set that guaranteed maximum price for that project. The district had a desire to have a special needs wing that was really specific to support them, and as we bid out the project initially, it didn't seem like we could, it wasn't part of the bid. It was like an alternate, like a want, but not a need. And so, as we went through the project, we were continually looking for savings, which came through many different ways, whether it was, winter conditions money that we were able to save, or whatever else we were able to save. So about 2/3 of the way through the project, we said, hey, we think there's enough. We're not gonna bill for this. So you have enough. So right now, if you wanna add that wing, we'll add it. So we ended up adding that wing to that building. So we did get to the budget. I mean, we hit that number, but we're able to expand the scope of the project a little bit larger than what originally fit inside the budget, if that makes sense.
Follow up on that, Scott. I know, community understanding or the feeling in the community from early 90s when the middle school was built was that, there were cost overruns so much that we didn't build the gym. And so the community kind of felt a little bit burnt about that.
Absolutely.
25 years before they built that gym.
Right.
And so I do think there's that feeling in the community, whether that's what actually happened or not, that's what people understood.
Right.
And so I think there's some worry that they're asking for 55, it's really gonna be 70, or we're not gonna do it, or they're asking for so much because that way they can cut out the threshold if they had to and say, well, let's just finish the high school or something like that. So that may be good to kind of help people understand that that's a maximum guaranteed
It is,
bid to finish the project, and they wouldn't get hurt again.
yeah.
Kind of idea.
And so, again, when we went for our RFQ, we brought in Headwaters and we brought in Design West. Before we even wrote the language for the ballot, as we were putting things together, that price kept creeping and creeping and creeping. And by the way, I just want to give you a little side note. Our bond capacity is at $68,000, or $68 million, excuse me. So obviously, I don't want to go out and spend $68 million on a facility or facilities, right? You want to keep that bond capacity there. And so when we went through this and I started seeing that inch up a little bit, and we started communicating. This is why bringing these folks on so really is important. I kept looking at it, well, that's gonna get bigger and bigger and bigger, and I don't think we need to do that, so we pulled some things back to keep it and maintain it at that 55 million or 65. We won't go over that, can't go over that, right? If we do, then we're gonna figure something else out. It happened in a couple of different school districts across the state not too long ago. I can speak specifically to Cassia because I was there. They came out, they had asked for a bond of 39 million. What they were trying to do came out to 52 million. And they had to cut way back. What's the contingency plan now? Of course, just like you're saying, the community's like, well, we bonded, we passed that for you. And now you're telling me you actually need $13 million more than what you got. And a lot of angry folks. We want to stay within that realm. I trust our builders and our architects that they've been building schools, like he said, for a lot of years, at least 1 year since, for 8 years. I think they've got a pretty good handle on that market, and we'll stay right there at that amount. You're good, go ahead.
Next question I had was, last couple of years, we've seen a real hardship on the community rec programs. The recreation programs, the sports programs for the community, partly because there is no gym space for them.
Right.
Churches don't allow them in anymore.
Right,
It's hard with these two schools to get gym time because they're always full
Yep.
with other stuff. And then the city made some changes to the way that they were administering the school gym
Right.
time for the city rec programs and trying to charge money and stuff like that for it. So I'm curious if there's any talk in the district about trying to assure the community of community access to the gyms and being able to help support the city rec programs and be able to do that in a way that we don't have to feel like we're fighting with the city all the time, trying to get access to gym space for the kids in the community that don't have any other gyms.
yeah, and a phenomenal question, because I'm dealing with some of that right now, right? We're going through trying to find out, especially spring schedule. It's a nightmare. When baseball and softball and track should be out on the fields and the track. We're running inside in Silver Springs until May, and then it seems like we get out for one opportunity before we go to state. And so that's part of why we're looking at building 2 extra gyms as well. Obviously, with an auxiliary gym at the high school, that would be pretty solid to have most of our athletic programs right there. Yes. I was just I'm gonna address that right now. And I'm a wrestling guy, by the way. This is a great question too. So, and funny enough, we're working with Design West to line up those gyms so that when we open the doors, there's an area, a track, kind of an area that our students that run the track and field can utilize those 2 gyms and working out instead of hallways, right? So that's one of the things we're very aware of. We're gonna continue to work with the community, but again, so that gives us now 4 gyms. And to your question, one of those little athletic areas that I showed you is gonna be a wrestling room for the high school. Okay? And so that's gonna be a little bit more of a sliver, but what that does is it opens up a gymnasium. So now that gives us 5 gymnasiums for the opportunity for our communities to be able to really participate in and still, I think, maintain the middle and high school athletic programs and get their practices as well.
With the idea that like 4th grade basketball teams can go do their practices and stuff in there also, not only schools.
Outside of the communities, outside of the rec league, the city rec league, or
Just with the city rec league.
yeah,
Star teams
Yeah, I think we need to look at those things and really address those. I know we're, like I said, we're having conversations right now with the city and the things that they're looking at and what we need to accomplish. And it's a struggle because that gym space just isn't there, and we feel like we've got 2 gymnasiums. But when we're adding to that and opening up that, now I will tell you that part of the cost savings for the auxiliary gym, the elementary gym, we're not gonna put hardwood on it, we're gonna put that synthetic stuff that's already in the middle school gym, they use for the wrestling room. That's gonna be a cost savings over time, as well as putting it in, but still gives us an opportunity for those young kids to be able to participate. I think the auxiliary gyms, I think this auxiliary gym is gonna have 10 bleachers on one side only. So, we'll be able to run programs in there during the weekend, and we can have several games going on at the same time. And then I think a similar size of bleachers in the elementary too, as well, as it seems like it's 10 bleachers high on one side. So, yeah, you're gonna be able to fit fans and do some of that stuff for sure.
The other thing I might just throw out there too is as we don't run too far on the design, because design costs money and until upon passes, the district doesn't want to expend a bunch of funds. So, but you have to run far enough so at least we can kind of get an idea as to what those renderings are. So they're just preliminary. It was an opportunity for us as the contracting team to have something to look at, and do square footage and figure out cost. But one of the biggest considerations, if you look at that layout, like over at the elementary school gym, that we looked at it in several different locations, but it was pushed to the front near the parking lot and with separate entrances, but to accommodate exactly what you're talking about. So it was a pretty significant consideration in the layout of the site to accommodate community, city, events and meetings and stuff.
So, yeah, that's the plan, and to allow that utilization of it, right? We want to make sure that our high school athletics are getting that, and I really think we'll be pretty close, and we may have to utilize a little bit, maybe of one auxiliary gym, but that still would leave us 2 auxiliary gyms that we're really not using for those athletics.
Sorry, but our main gym would still be this old one.
Right? Yeah.
We're gonna host our high school games.
Yeah. Yeah.
Which has limited seating times, and other size of times. And what's the life expectancy on that before we have to turn around and we're looking to build another gym? Is there a life expectancy left on it where this one's?
I don't really know.
That gym was built at the same time?
I'd have to get back to you and see what the assessment said. We haven't seen anything that I remember that tells us that it had the assessment or the life expectancy of the high school. And it's really good shape now. The fire went down a little bit, right, with the locker room, and rebuilding that. And then, again, back to what Ira was talking about, what can we do if there is a little bit of money left? We want to look at what we can do inside that building to make it a little bit better too. So,
but you can't expand bleacher size. The head bleachers are a problem. One of the only gyms in the state that I know of that has head bleachers.
yeah.
Because of space.
Yeah.
We're crashing into the floor right now.
Yeah, and it's a great question. I don't know how to answer it. We haven't looked at that. We felt like keeping it the way it was would be a cost savings by adding just the auxiliary portion of that.
The auxiliary built reasonable size.
This is going to be a full-size gym. It's just not going to have a seating.
Well,
Right, and that's what you're asking.
yeah,
Right. Certainly something we can look into for sure. See if that cost, if it fit into that cost, and see if that's what we were going to do. So,
I'd be shocked if that's been 24 years. Just saying.
I'll look. Yeah, no, I appreciate that. I'll look and I'll get back to you. See if there was anything that was assessed when we did it 10 years ago with that gym. But we haven't had any issues with it since I've been here, right? Heating, cooling, right? We've got the big fans and those kinds of things. So, great question. I'll look into it and get back to you. Yes, sir.
I don't know or understand business in the school district.
You don't understand that?
I say I don't know or understand business in the school district, but has there been any prep in the past to prepare for this?
As far as, so is there any savings?
Outside?
So, Great question. So his question is, has there been any preparation in putting money aside for this bond? And unfortunately, I have to tell you, very little, only because we're going out for those levies, and so we're spending those monies. When we go out to that facilities, levy, we're also spending those monies to keep up our schools and maintain those schools and keep our staff there. So not much of an extra fund. Our fund balance and carryover that we try to maintain is, according to our auditors, is you want to have at least a 3-month carryover every year in the event that there's a major catastrophe or something. And so we're at that point with our auditors, and that's right around $1.2, $1.3 million that we try to carry over every year, and we try to build on that. The district hasn't been that far ahead, even prior to me, but we're trying to work on that to put some money aside so we can build that carryover every year up to where maybe down the road we can use some of that like you're talking about. Good question. Yeah.
So I have apprentices with a homeschool,
Mhm.
and with that I have to add, we homeschool because we were informed of what our options were. And so, in 2020, that conversation was had where when I requested the reevaluation to get back on it, I was told basically all of our resources are tapped, so you can qualify for nothing else for it. So at that point, me and my daughter, our options were stay the course and failure was the projection of what had to be changed. So we opted with our children.
Sure.
And so at that point, and today, I look at this as a homeschool mom, and I am 100% dependent on our return.
Sure, yeah.
I get paid for everything out of my pocket.
Right.
I get to save money.
Right.
So I look at this, and I try to maintain a positive attitude. I have lots of relationships, I have lots of family and friends whose kids are in school, I have some homeschool some, but not others. So know that I try to maintain a very positive
Yeah, no.
perspective. So I look at this though, going, the challenge is, we build this new facility, is the school district, and actively looking at trying to change the current outcome of our students, because most recently, and I've heard this from multiple sources, like we're very confident saying that the high school reassessed the math skills, and 60% failed 6th grade fractions. And so now 60% of the high schools in aviation for math skills that they don't have.
Right.
And then our reading skills are also roughly around the 50% are competent. And so I look at this, and again, I'm chosen to homeschool because that was the only option we really had. And so I look at this and say, okay, we want to ask for this, and I see the disabilities, know that I advocated hard in 2014 for down for all of them. I advocated and was a very open mouthpiece for trying to get a hold on that effort. But now being in my shoes, it's like, I'm not inherently against the bond, but I'm also asking how they're actually going to make the outcomes of our kids better.
Right.
And what is the school district planning, or how are they trying to look at restructuring to change the outcomes we have? And that's where I'm at, like, it's not gonna be as radical increase because our taxes, aren't crazy as far as that, but it's just that component of like, this levy still, I still don't teach my kids. I have a 7th grader and a 9th grader. And,
Yes, you will.
but,
I want to address that. I want to address that for you right now. That was said prior to me. I want you to come in and visit with me. I've got a special ed director who would like to assist you. Come and talk to us. That's all I'm asking, okay? Don't have to make a decision, but I want you to come and talk to us. On the other side of that, programmatically, and I'll go down the road. Yes, math is a challenge. Each of the other districts that I've worked in, math has been a challenge. It's not a problem just in Soda Springs, it's a problem nationwide, it's a problem statewide. I'm not gonna sugarcoat it, I'm not gonna go down that road. I think there needs to be some systemic changes in our programs in the public education system. And one of them is math literacy at the lower levels. Okay, what does that mean? That means we've got to catch those kids just like we do for reading, just like we do for special ed, just like we do for dyslexia, just like we do for Title I MTSS, all of those programs, we've got to start with our math programs at a lower level. We do a good job. I'm not throwing my teachers under a bus, but is it good enough? No. And so, yeah, we've been assessing our kids, and yes, we don't know if the number's 60%, I can't tell you that. But yes, we have created, because we're seeing that there's a problem with our students not being up to par in their mathematics. We want to be able to reclaim that, we want to go back. And so one of the things we're doing, and I'm sorry, this can take a few minutes, bear with me. I have been sending, since I've been here, we've started what we call professional learning communities. You can look that up. It's a program that when I grew up, and I'll tell you a quick story on the other side of this. When I first started teaching in Idaho Falls 30 years ago, I went to the English department and I said, I hear you've got a video. Thomas Beckett. I did it when I was student teaching. I used it. It was a great piece of material to be able to look at the difference between church and state back then. Okay? I went to the English department. I said, can I borrow that video? And they said no. And I said, why? I'm a new teacher, right? Talking to a veteran teacher who's probably been there 20 years or something. She goes, we don't do that here. What do you mean you don't do that here? She says, well, what are you going to use it for? And I said, well, there's some great historical content in it. She goes, yeah, but we don't use it that way. We use it for the language content. I said, that's awesome. We can collaborate that way. We can talk about this. She goes, no, you're not using it because when those kids come as seniors, if you use it as sophomore, they'll never be interested in it. And I went away and I went, wow, that's weird. So I went right to the principal and I said, hey, Mr. So-and-so, do you have a policy here that says this? He goes, I don't even know what you're talking about, Scott. I said, it's just what I was told. He said, what's the name of the video? And I told him. He said, buy it. So I did. I used it for the 6 years I was at Hillcrest. The English department quit using it. I say that because I'm a believer in collaboration. Okay? And so that's what PLCs are, professional learning communities. You see it at the state level, you're starting to see it at the national level. And what that means is that we want teachers to get together and communicate, not only this way, but vertically as well. So my third grade teachers, and we're focusing on math this year, and that's why you're getting the information you're getting, because we are looking at it hard. We're recognizing we need to make some improvements. I've got we received a grant through the state. I don't remember how much money total it was, but we've sent several of our teachers to different trainings this summer through that grant, so that we can start learning how to communicate and talk about the needs that we have, assess our students in a proper way, looking at the things that we need to do to assist them and help them get better. And that's one reason why this class has come out. We recognize that there's a problem, so we want these kids to be able to at least be able to do 8th grade math before they graduate, right? Which sounds low, but that's what the real world works with. We've done the research and seen that. And so as we go through this, that's one of the things we're doing. Now, I can go later on that if you want to come talk to me about it. Some of the other things we're doing, we had a student that went to college from here, and she was in a science class. And they said, we're going to move into the lab. And she's like, and I'm telling this story, my version, that probably a little different. But essentially, she went in and said, maybe I should have you tell Paul, but she's like, I've never been in a lab. I didn't know how to use that information. I didn't know how to use those tools, those materials. And so one of the things that we're doing is we're building a science room, and we're building a lab in the middle of it so those teachers can share the science room and really help our students better their education, be better prepared for the future, right? And so, especially for those kids that are going to a four-year college. CTE building, not part of the bond, not part of community monies. We're building that so we can have other opportunities for career and technical education programs. If you got a minute afterwards, I'll tell you a story about my daughter who struggled in school all the way through and has now got a degree in not only CAD, but also interior design, and she's thriving because of those other opportunities we want to give kids. That makes sense. So I'd love to talk to you a little bit more. Please come into my office. Thank you. Yeah.
So, I guess I don't know too much about all this, but, so say it doesn't pass.
Yeah, what's the contingency plan?
Yeah.
We're gonna come back to you.
Yeah.
We're gonna come
Like, what
back
are
to
the
you.
other options? Where are you gonna reach out?
We're gonna come back to the community and say, okay, what would you like to do? We feel strongly enough that this is at the end of its days. And so we'll come back and we'll say, okay, we recognize it. And that's why we're having this informational meeting for informational purposes only. And then you as the constituents get to go out, make your mind up, and decide how you want to do it. So you'll vote, yes or no, and we'll look at it, and if it's a no vote, then we'll come back and we'll ask the community, where do we want to go from here? What do we want to do? I have a facilities committee, it's 6 or 8 people strong, we meet 3 or 4 times a month, or 3 or 4 times a year, excuse me, but we would grow that and maybe hold some of these meetings and come back and say, okay, thank you, what would you like us to do, and where would we like to go from here? So it's a great question. Yeah, but again, it's a foundational thing, right? And so to be able to renovate would be good, but really you're only gonna buy another 20 years maybe out of it, 30 years. So you won't see the longevity and foundations. Yeah, they're just, they're tough to do. Tough to do.
The cost per square foot to renovate is pretty expensive. I mean, you can always renovate, but we just found that, you know, you'll see those numbers and like, what I'm getting for this number versus what I'm getting for this number, maybe this number's slightly higher, but it's kind of a better bang for your buck. I'm not trying to advocate for one or the other necessarily, other than that, as we've assessed with other districts, they typically, if it's a little renovation, it's not structural, it's just cosmetic and that kind of stuff, great, but if it's really foundational, or they're trying to expand, right, then a lot of times it just makes sense.
And in response, again, we would go back to Hooper, right? We looked at that, we talked about that, and we really felt like it was more cost effective to have the 6 classrooms plus a gymnasium. Because even at Hooper, there's not a gymnasium, it's the same size as the cafeteria at the elementary school. And so to bring Hooper back up to code would be more cost. Because really we would need demolition of the north side of it, it constantly floods, there's issues with it on a regular basis, and so that demo and then bringing everything back up to code would cost more than just the 6 classrooms. The other cost of that is the gymnasium we're trying to add to support the community and the head yourself as well. Jacob?
Yeah, schematic actually, me too. So we have a couple of kids that need to run around at recess in order to learn in elementary, so that's pretty big. It looks like you still have the playground to the back.
Yep.
You get rid of the big grass field, is there any growth anywhere for grass areas for be able to run around, play soccer and stuff?
That whole backfield is wide open, we're not touching it at all. Is that what you're asking, that my answer
Yeah,
here?
the front field's huge, I mean, I see whenever I drive by it.
Yeah.
They're always out there.
Yeah, and we're just gonna relocate them to the back and then utilize that more. It's more used in the mornings, when they're coming to school than it is in the afternoons. And so we would move those kiddos to the back area, put eyes on them there, and then let them run around there too. And then again, the recess in the middle of the winter, that goes away, both sides of it, right? And we'll have a gymnasium where they can run around in there during lunch, whatever. Yeah, I'm with you. I don't want to lose field, but to build the gym and to do everything that we need to do, we feel like this is where we need to go with it. Yes, sir.
So, Scott, I was recently left the school district of Riverbend Elementary School. I said recently left the school district of elementary school from Riverbend. They're able to get $16 million in grants. So why have we not looked at grants?
I haven't. I would be more than happy to talk to the superintendent over there and find out where they got those.
Awesome.
Sure.
Just very finished it.
Yeah,
So,
Yeah.
at least there are grants out there. Maybe it was a one-time thing or business, but.
Yeah.
But you had mentioned earlier, Mike, or somebody had mentioned that there was up to be more, Idaho does allow for that. So, I mean, there's possibilities of doing that, just seems like things should have gone a little bit more.
Sure.
Than trying to plunk down $55 million on community at large.
yeah. And I don't have a problem looking into that. Were you the builders of that elementary school?
Yeah, we did build, the stuff at Blackfoot. They did get a grant for, specifically for the CTE program. And, it was, like a federal grant, and they got some state money that supplemented, but it was specific, the state was giving out money specifically for CTE programs, and they had to apply for it, so it was kind of like, it was a grant. But it was from from what I understand, it was all, had to be used for the, for CTE. So they're building, they're calling it the BTEC, the Blackfoot Technical Education Center, and, that's what they're using their grant money for. So they're typically, for a program like that, it's, from what I understand, again, the grants that you can get, a lot of times they're really specific purposes, so you can get a grant for, you know, this technical education piece, or you can, you know, get different grants for specific things, but, anything that's sizable enough to build a full school, I've never seen a grant that big.
And they didn't, the article in the Idaho State Journal didn't mention that it was for the entirety of the school, but it did specify that $16 million were, in grants for the elementary school. So
Yeah,
unless they misrepresented where that money went or whatever in the article, that's possible.
Sure, I'll be more than happy to call, you know, Ryan Dress is his name, superintendent, I know, I can call him and find out, I'll have a couple of that, thank you. Anything else? Thank you for coming, I appreciate it. We are gonna have one more, you're welcome to spread the word, we're gonna do it on the 24th at 7 o'clock right here again. And if you know somebody that's like, I can't make evenings, we've got so much going on, we're having one next Tuesday at 1 o'clock right here as well. So we'll meet 2 more times. We do have a community coalition of folks that are working closely and doing some things for the community as well. We've got about 11 people. Paulette, Horsley's, Galen, a few other people that aren't here tonight. Am I missing anybody that is here? So if you're interested in questions and answers from them, they're also available to do that. You're welcome to, again, call me, send an email on our website. Whatever you need to do, I'll be more than happy to sit down with you and visit with you as well, without a problem. So, again, thank you so much for coming, we appreciate it. Yeah,
Quick question, what you've done here tonight has helped me immensely.
thank you.
Stories that you told about the growth of our education for the kids, how can we spread that into the community? How can we, I mean, word of mouth obviously isn't working.
Yeah.
So,
And we really lost a lot when we lost the Caribou County Sun, right? But we do have a newspaper that's very supportive of us, and I know a lot of people don't take that newspaper. We've put articles in that. We've got our Facebook page. Our community is Citizens, help me out.
Citizens for Soda Springs School.
One more time.
Citizens for Soda Springs Schools.
Thanks. Our community has a website called Citizens for Soda Springs School on Facebook, and so there's that. Communicate with the people that you know. If you're interested in communicating with this committee and joining it and help spread the word, they're looking for people to help them as well and kind of go down that road. So I know they're going to be canvassing the community soon, and you'll be seeing a lot more of that. So we were trying to get that.
Door to
door. Door to door. So thank you, and I appreciate that compliment. Yeah, thank you. You guys have a great evening. And again, 2 more, one on Tuesday at 1, and another on the 24th at 7. Thank you, appreciate it.
Gets camouflaged.
Yeah. So,